What is going on, Fantasy Alarm Nation? My name is Justin Fensterman, along with Sean Mitchell, and this is the DFS NBA live stream, getting you ready for this 9-game slate here for tonight. Sean, what's going on? It's been a while. How are you?
Yeah, I was really excited whenever I got word that I would be doing the live stream with D Finsty. I was pretty pumped. Got a nice 9-game slate, man. All the news is coming in right about now, but mostly, we have most of the news. So I'm really pumped. I think it's a good slate. There's a lot to like. Even with the pod last night, there was just so much that we talked about, and now a lot of it's kind of coming to fruition. So I'm ready. I'm good. Let's go.
John and Pemba is producing our live stream and also on the playbook, a man of many characteristics and traits right there. That's what he does. He does everything on fantasyalarm.com. We're going to go over position by position, but first, let's get you caught up with everything that's going on. Run down some injuries quickly, Sean, and then we'll go to the point guards, and we'll talk about prices on FanDuel and DraftKings. Blake Griffin is resting, so he's going to be out for this game for the Pistons. Marcus Smart just ruled out with that sprained thumb, so he is done. We're waiting on Darius Garland. He's still questionable. Alec Burks is out for the Knicks. PJ Washington available. Josh Jackson out for the Pistons. Pistons got a few guys out. We're going to talk about someone that's in Mr. Mpemba's playbook that we like. Also, Evan Fournier for the Magic. He is out with the back injury. We've got Herter. He should be available to play. Gallinari still out. Jeff Teague is also out, so the Celtics are missing some guards as well. So, Sean, let's start with the point guard spot here. And when you're thinking of the pay up, someone who is playing without restrictions from what we've seen, but might not be 100% going in is Luka Doncic. And anytime, you and I were talking about this before, anytime the Rockets are on that slate, I'm looking on who's the other side because you got to attack Houston. New Year, same story, my man.
That's right, man. Hey, I mean, anytime you can get Luka coming in at the ownership that he's looking to be projected right now, Curry having that big night last night, so everybody's going to be chasing those points, kind of really suppressing that ownership on Luka as well. So, yeah, you just kind of lick your chops and know that, that matchup you're getting with Houston, especially with a guy as talented as Luka, as long as he's good to go and he's probable, set to play, I got no issues looking at him definitely in GPPs tonight.
So you have him, you have Steph Curry, who you mentioned, who is also in John and Pemba's playbook here on fantasyalarm.com. And also Trae Young against the Knicks, another team where you can score on them. You can actually get inside on them. We're going to talk about some front court presence that is going to produce against the Knicks for the Hawks. But between Trae Young, Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, if we're paying up at point guard, who you thinking?
Well, I mean, Trae's actually kind of fallen by the wayside as far as ownership goes, too, that kind of seeing now. And that's obviously something that, John mentions here in his playbook is that, even Malcolm Brogdon had a really good game against the Knicks just, a day ago, just went off. Elf Payton is still just not a great defender. The rest of the team is actually defending very well. They've actually been playing really good ball, the Knicks this year so far. But right now, I mean, Curry, he's projected to be a little owned tonight, and I'm not loving it as a GPP player. I think he kind of went off last night. I know the matchups is great here with Sacramento as that late night hammer, but honestly, I think getting these other two guys at the ownership that I'm seeing right now, I think you're kind of getting a steal. I mean, Luka, the guy that we know, he was before he got injured and before he missed that last game. We talked about it. He had that really one rough game afterwards, but the game before it. When Dallas was totally blown out, he was on his way to a triple-double, and he only played 25 minutes. So I think a lot of people are forgetting that fact of how good Luka can be, and especially now that he's getting a prime matchup here against a team like Houston. I just don't see how you can not go there in GPPs, especially in throwing in a couple of Traes. Trae Young, I think he's kind of fallen by the wayside. Like I said, I think that Curry is probably, at the moment, as far as me with GPPs, he's probably third on this list.
No, absolutely. And when you see someone scoring 60-plus points, it's all flashy and everything, and everybody gravitates towards that. But not you. You're going to be a little bit different, and that's to all of you out there. That's how we're going to help train everybody to think a little bit differently and not chase that chalk from last night. Not saying Stephen Curry's not going to have a big night. It's a great matchup. I love attacking Sacramento almost as much as I love attacking Houston. But looking at the rosters and the differences between them, where is Dallas's front court? It's non-existent. It's Kristaps Porzingis who is still hurt. When you have The Warriors, they at least have a little something going with Wiseman and Draymond Green when he decides to be involved in the offense, not involved in the offense. So with that alone, I just feel like with Luka, outside of maybe Josh Richardson and Tim Hardaway Jr., he has virtually no competition for shots.
No, I mean, Jalen Brunson stepped in last night, had a really good game, but I mean, he's not going to be on the floor with Luka out there. He might get a little extra run, because of his big game last night. But other than that, yeah, I mean, Luka is going to be that 40% usage. It's going to be a fast-paced matchup here with Houston, and yeah, I don't see how I can get away from it.
Yeah, I don't want to get away from the matchup though, Sean, because on the other side of that matchup, you got John Wall. Now, the first thing I do when I look to see if I'm remotely using John Wall is, when was the last time John Wall played? Okay, it's been a couple of days. Woo, we're good. So even though the price point is pretty high, especially on FanDuel, $8,500, whereas on DraftKings it's $7,600. So with that, John Wall has done a great job in the minutes he's been given, 2 games, both in which he played 37. So they're being very lenient with him when they're allowing him to see the floor. So going into this game, even though James Harden is not 100%, but what are you thinking about John Wall going up against Luka tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I said it on the pod last night. That was before we knew that Harden was going to play. But, I mean, at 7.6 on DraftKings, my goodness. I mean, the guy's put up 45 and 50, fantasy points in his last 2 games, and now you're giving him 7.6. I mean, I like stacking that game. I'm sure it will maybe be a little popular. But in the same retrospect, he's not really projected to be that highly owned. I mean, it's kind of crazy to see that kind of price on DraftKings for a guy that's put up 45 and 50 fantasy points in his last 2 games, had a couple of days off, as you mentioned, and now he's getting a prime matchup here against Dallas. So, yeah, I'm all for some John Wall on DraftKings. Now, on FanDuel, I'm not much of a fan. I mean, that price is pretty up there, and he's kind of taking a little bit out of his upside, out of that with that pricing. So, I like it on DraftKings. FanDuel, not so much.
Other guards that you can look at, I mean, I was thinking of putting in the starting 5 where I put John Wall in there. Darren Fox was the other one I was thinking about. I was very much between them. But what I try to do is I try to go down in price a little bit. I don't always do that. I don't look for just 7K guys. If there's an 8K guy, even higher price guy, I'll absolutely put him in the starting 5. Just 5 players that we're interested in. Would put out videos every day for your NBA content here at fantasyalarm.com. But besides Fox, who's also in a good matchup, if we want to spend down a little bit, Sean, someone that you, me, John, and Pemba were just talking about, no surprise here, the Charlotte guards are controlling about 80% of the offense, it seems like. And I include LaMelo Ball when I say that. So what have you seen from LaMelo Ball that makes you maybe a little intrigued in this matchup for him?
I mean, the simple fact that, in this same matchup, he put up, 37 fantasy points in this last game. His minutes have increased over the last 3 games, consecutively. Went from 27 to 29 to 31. And he's averaging right around 39 fantasy points. There's I mean, you can't really say anything bad about LaMelo Ball right now. Had a couple of bad games to start the season. Everybody was kind of making fun of him, saying that he, was a total bust. His shot's awful. And then all of a sudden now everybody loves him, right? I mean, that's kind of how that goes.
They're just making fun of him because he's LeVar Ball's son. That's why.
But here's the thing about it. He's 5.6K on DraftKings. His price went up $100. I mean, I don't – the thing is I on the pod last night, I said that I felt like Philly was probably going to blow them out this time. They're, a double-digit favorite right here, right around the same total. They hung around in this last game, but they still, Philly still won by 13 points, which was 15, and then they got a late bucket there to make it 13. So literally they probably should have won by more. But they just kind of let the Hornets hang around, and Gordon Hayward made shots, and LaMelo Ball played well, and Terry Rozier went for 35 actual. If that doesn't happen, it's easily a 20 or 30-point game in Philadelphia's favor. So with that being said, I still think that LaMelo is going to get all of that garbage run. So, I mean, he's just in play in all formats. Well, I say all formats. On DraftKings, on FanDuel, his price, went up. He got the bump on FanDuel. 6,400 kind of makes you think a little bit more about him. But on DraftKings, he's definitely in play.
Let's look at maybe a cheap point guard before we move on to high-price shooting guards. If there's someone that we have to give a look at, and that's because he played good amount of minutes in his last game last night. Pritchard from the Celtics as well. Someone we have to look at now with Teague hurt and Marcus Smart hurt, and this is a great price point, 3,700 on both sites, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, we know he's gonna get run. He's likely gonna start now. He's gonna probably be the starting point guard in a decent matchup here against Toronto. Toronto's not the same defensive team that they've been. He's just uber cheap. I mean, he's literally going to be that cash, free spot. He's going to be your free spot in cash tonight.
Let's move on to shooting guards here, because when you're looking at the shooting guards, when this guy is on the slate, he is always the highest priced guy, and that is James Harden. Maybe not 100% though, and that's sometimes, even if he's deemed healthy and available, no restrictions, still seeing that he had a little bit of a designation makes me wonder if I should be spending over $11K on this guy. What are you doing about it?
I don't know, man. I mean, he's projected to be really low owned. I don't know if we've seen a game yet where all three, James Harden, Christian Wood, and John Wall all had really good games. I'm not sure that that's feasible. It's kind of like you're starting to get into the Milwaukee Bucks situation where you have three guys that are, all vying for the usage with Giannis, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday. So it's getting to that point where you don't know, especially at 11K, if he can return you that 65, 75 that you're going to have just for value. If you're wanting to play him in a GPP, you're going to need the 80-pointer to win a GPP with James Harden tonight, at least in my opinion. So, yeah, I'll probably look at Luka at just a little bit cheaper, who I think can go for that 65, 75 points and right around the same ownership.
Who else would you be looking at if you're looking at spending up at shooting guard? Who else is there? Because this was kind of hard for me to pick, especially for that starting five. I'll tell you who my guy was. If you didn't check it out, Sean, shame on you. I'm just kidding. I know you've got a very, very busy life, but who else at shooting guard are you interested in?
Well, I think Colin Sexton is going to be pretty popular tonight, especially if Darius Garland.
That's the guy. That's my guy.
You don't think I watch your starting five, but I do. No, Colin Sexton, man. I mean, he's just been playing excellently. The guy's just shooting the ball, lights out.
Do you think that he's beyond scoring dependent guard that he was last year? Because here's the problem. Here's what I always run into with these shooting guards. When I often spend up on these guys that really just score and that's it, I'm praying for 25 points. And that's not a fun way to watch the game. It's one thing if you have a prop on something like that. Still not a fun prop to bet 25 points. But when it comes to Colin Sexton, seeing what he's been doing with the steals and also the dimes too, it gives me a little bit more confidence. It bumps it up where I'm willing to bump up my expectations, just like these price points are in the 7K range.
Yeah. I mean, and totally great points there. Yeah, exactly. And one other guy that I'm looking at, and I was really high on him the other day when I did the playbook, is Fred VanVleet. I mean, now no Marcus Smart. They got Jaylen Brown, who's a good defender. He'll likely be on VanVleet, but VanVleet has just turned it on to another level again. He's playing really well. Scoring 25 actual a night plus. So Fred VanVleet, I know his price is a little bit in that spot where you're like, at 7.7 on DraftKings, but major three-point shooter. I think that, he's going to be able to play well tonight. I think this game will be close. I don't think it'll be a blowout. I think that, with Tatum and Jaylen Brown still there for Boston, I think it'll make it semi-close and they'll hang around, and I think it'll be a good game. So Fred VanVleet's starting to catch my eye a little bit more. I wasn't as high on him, because I didn't know about Marcus Smart. But now that Marcus Smart's out, I think, that defense will gravitate a little bit differently. So I'm kind of digging some Fred VanVleet.
What do you think's been the thing with Jimmy Butler? He hasn't been that strong to start the year. Has he been banged up? Is he not look good in good conditioning? When he's been out there, it's not that he doesn't look good. It's just like he almost looks misplaced when he's out on the court. And I'm not used to that from Jimmy Butler.
No, I mean, some nights you get the Jimmy Butler that's attacking, that's wanting to be scoring first, and then some nights you get him where he's just straight facilitator, wants to dish the ball off every time, wants to
hate that
play, wants to make the right pass. That's how a lot of these, like a Jimmy Butler who's on a team that has good guys around him, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Bam Adebayo. I mean, when he's got guys like that around him, it's easier for him to dish it off because he knows those guys can make shots. He knows that they know how to play the offense well. So it makes it hard for me to play Jimmy Butler at that, and his price is coming down, which is a bad thing. Before we know it, we're going to have like a 7K flat Jimmy Butler, and you're just going to have to jam him in, and then I'm just going to be really angry. But, I don't know. On a 9-game slate like this, no. I just don't. I know John, big fan of Jimmy Butler. He loves him some Jimmy Butler, but for me, I just think there's other spots in that range that I would just rather pay elsewhere.
We getting too cute if we're going with the sauce Terrence Ross with no Fournier in this. I liked Ross better when his price point's more in the mid 5K rather than the upper. And it just seems like even before this was the price point, and now with Fournier out, it makes him more appealing despite the price tag. Where are you heading with Orlando in this situation?
Boost.
Right.
Makes sense. He's literally one of my top plays tonight. But Terrence Ross has been really dang good, man. And the bad thing is, once again, the same thing that happened the other night. He was virtually 2% owned, and he went off for 32, 33 fantasy points. The only bad thing about Terrence Ross is he's kind of in that same boat where Colin Sexton was last year, where he was just shooting three-pointers. He might have got you 1 or 2 rebounds a game. Luckily, if you got a steal, maybe. But on the nights that he actually does put in some secondary stats, he can really get you those points. And, he could end up with a 40-pointer in no time. With Evan Fournier out, we know he's going to play probably 30 minutes. He's that scoring, punch right off the bench. And I hate to say it, but we've faded the Cleveland guards, for years now. Darius Garland was just now.
Right. And with Damian Dotson in that starting lineup, Sean, again, Colin Sexton, baby.
Colin Sexton is definitely a play, man. But, hey, I really like Terrence Ross on DraftKings. I don't love the price at 6K. It's more of a cat getting into a cashy situation there than GPP because his price is starting to get into his upside. But I still think he's fine. I still think he's okay. Probably more for cash, though.
One other shooting guard I like before we move on to the threes, Josh Richardson. He's in John's playbook as well, and rightfully so. This guy's the number 2 option. He's against Houston, and whether Harden or whoever's on him, it doesn't matter. They're not going to be able to stop him. Harden, Gordon, nah. Josh Richardson at that FanDuel 4,800 in his insulting price. 5,300, I still like that. And John notes in the playbook that he likes him more without Doncic in there naturally. But still, even with Luka in there, if you're building stars and scrubs, I'm fine with going with the number 2 score on this Dallas squad.
Yeah, it's a decent matchup, like you said, with Houston. Matchups there, game flow will be there. He's been kind of slow to start the year, but he's still putting up stats. He's not just totally, dusting it out. He's okay. He's, like you said, he's the number 2, maybe the number 3 with THJ. They both kind of even out the shots on whatever Luka's not in. But, as you mentioned, at 4,800, he is known for defense first. So you do get those counting stats with, the blocks, the steals. And then, if he hits a couple 3-pointers, he can really get that, get his value up.
Yeah, and I've explained this before. The difference between Richardson and Tim Hardaway Jr., one, Sean pointed out, Richardson is a better defender, so that's going to give him the bump when it comes to minutes automatically. But also, he works the elbow. He'll get inside the lane. A lot of the time, Tim Hardaway Jr. will be frozen out at the arc, and that's fine. That's where they want to keep him. On transition, Tim Hardaway Jr. can drive the floor. Very good floor runner. However, he's more of the bailout option when you have a Josh Richardson who can work the elbows. So that's why I give it a little bit more in the confidence factor to Richardson. Now I got a question. For you, Sean. Very big question here. When it comes to small forward, who would you rather spend 8K plus on? Jaylen Brown or Brandon Ingram?
Jaylen Brown.
When it comes to
Brandon Ingram has been my boy. He's uber consistent, but Jaylen Brown is just on another level right now. When I wrote the playbook the other day, I had mentioned that Toronto was allowing the most fantasy points to the small forward spot. Guess who? Jaylen Brown is playing against tonight.
What's with OG Anunoby?
I don't know, man.
When did he decide to leave his defense in Canada or something like that? What's going on with this guy?
I don't know, but hey, right back down to the point. Jaylen Brown he's a walking flame ball. The guy's just now no Marcus Smart to deal with. No Jeff Teague. It's literally going to be the Jaylen Brown and the Jason Tatum show. and I'm all here for it. I mean, I'm all here for it. Jaylen Brown's literally a top 3 play for me. I've been saying it all day in the chat. He was on the pod last night. We talked about it. I even put him, on Twitter today whenever we were talking about our favorite plays. I said, I want this guy. That's the guy that I want. I want Jaylen Brown.
You have Tatum and Brown, and then you have everybody else when it comes to any kind of scoring prioritization. That's really what it is. And it's funny, on one of my fantasy NBA teams, I actually handcuffed in a way. I took both Tatum and Brown, and that team is kicking major tush right now because of it. Yeah, it's like you're handcuffing, you're hedging your bets, essentially. Yeah. Another small forward, and John and Pem, I'm going to give you a big thumbs up there for this one, because this is another fancy starting 5 guy, and I put him at my 4 here, Tobias Harris. And Sean, this is something that we should talk about very quickly, spend a minute on. There are going to be a good amount of situations where teams are playing each other, and then a day or two later, they're playing each other once again. Does that scare you off the player? Like, for instance, Tobias Harris filled up the stat sheet last time. And that's because this Charlotte team's going to have to send half of their team and half of their staff to stop Joel Embiid from having his way in the post, which they're not going to do. And to me, that screams open lanes for the slashing Tobias Harris. Once again, he can have a big game here, but they're fresh off just playing him.
Right. And, like I said, I mentioned it that I do think that Philadelphia could easily blow them out tonight. I mean, that was just my gut feeling last night when I was on the pod. I don't know. I don't mind Tobias Harris. I actually like him for tournaments. I liked him for tournaments the other night. Told everybody in the chat that I liked him for tournaments. I didn't really feel as comfy using him for cash for the main reason that if it could have easily went the other way. It could have easily went that Philadelphia was up 25 at half. Tobias plays another 8 to 10 to 12 minutes, and he's not scoring 45, 50 fantasy points. He's probably scoring more like 35. And then, you're looking at it as in a cash perspective, and you're like, okay, well, that's not going to be enough for my cash lineup. But it wasn't that way. It went the other way. He had a really good game. He filled the sheet, like you said, and he scored really well. For me, I'm probably just going to pay up and go with those 2 top guys, but that's me.
Yeah, I hear you there. I mean, look, they're not the most sexy options as well that are on the slate at small forward. I mean, there are other ones. I mean, you could go with Sacramento, but good luck. They're a headache. They do have some guys out. Halliburton is still out, so you've got that working for you if you wanted to go with someone like John recommended in Harrison Barnes. Other guys, you could look at that Knicks-Hawks matchup. A few guys that John has in the playbook there, which we'll touch on. R.J. Barrett from the Knicks side. But then from the Hawks side, Deandre Hunter, who is starting, and also Bogdanovich. Bogdanovich, by the way, 4,700 on FanDuel. You like any of those mid-court options on either side of that matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I like Hunter. To go back up to Harrison Barnes, just wanted to point out that is a revenge narrative. He's going back to Golden State. I like to throw that in. I called him Malik Beasley last night, facing Denver again. He went off for almost 50 fantasy points. Got to throw that out there, toot the own horn every once in a while. But Harrison Barnes, going back to the Bay Area, you love to see it. The guy's been averaging around 37, 38 fantasy points a game, even had an 18-pointer, and still is averaging 38 fantasy points, playing over 33 minutes a night, all except one game. So Harrison Barnes, do not, he's actually projected to be a little bit higher than I thought he would, but I still don't mind him. But Deandre Hunter has been playing really well. I know John and I, James and I, we've all of us have talked about how good this kid's been. He's, finally found his fit. He's playing that small forward spot, playing it well. He's actually been shooting the 3-ball extremely well. He's been being thrown on the other team's best player as far as defensively go. He's just a big guy.
That's going to keep him in the rotation.
Exactly. He's going to stay on the floor as long as he doesn't get in foul trouble, and he's done a really good job of that. And he's just shooting the ball extremely well. I don't see how you can, not like DeAndre Hunter. His price is still way fair. 54 on FanDuel, 52 on DraftKings. You get that 3-point bonus on DraftKings. At 52, you get a little bit of a discount. So, yeah, I like DeAndre Hunter there.
All right, let's make our job a little bit easier here because big men are plentiful on this slate. And, it's almost like you can't lose with a lot of these matchups here. You really can't. I mean, going all the way from Giannis with hardly anybody active in Detroit, it seems like, to Tatum, to Randall, who should be active. Even on the other side, Collins. I mean, when it comes to power forward, Christian Wood against Dallas. I mean, who would you prioritize? Who are two names that stick out? John and Peppa's got a lot of sexy names in the playbook tonight.
Yeah, I mean, for me right now, it's Christian Wood and Jason Tatum for a lot of the same reasons that we've already talked about. You know, with wanting to stack up that game in Houston and Dallas, Christian Wood is going to get his. As you mentioned, Dallas literally has, Maxi Kleba, Dwight Powell. I mean, they even played Boban a little bit last night. So, I really like Christian Wood. We know he's going to play loads of minutes. He's been just absolutely smashing in all spots. And then Tatum. I mean, how can you not like Tatum at 8.6 on DraftKings? I mean, that just seems like a giveaway right now, knowing that he's going to have, a 35% usage rate along with Jaylen Brown. They're both of those guys are easily in play for me right here.
Yeah, Julius Randle in play for me on FanDuel. I mean, 8,100 is fine. 9K, a little much there on DraftKings.
Getting steeper.
Right, it is getting steeper, but that's what's going to happen. The guy's a double-double machine. He makes double-doubles look easy.
Put up a couple triple-doubles almost already.
Yeah, he's making it all look easy. I mean, you mentioned Tatum, which is
a great matchup against Atlanta.
Right, I even think Domantas Sabonis in a good spot tonight if you want to pay up. So safe option as he's proven to be. I'll say this, Impemba puts in someone who I actually almost put as my power forward for the starting five. Gave him a little look because of how cheap he is. Marvin Bagley. But here's the thing, man. Like, I like Bagley. The rebounds are starting to go up, but will the scoring be there? That's on a night in, night out basis. They're just a very weirdly put together team, Sacramento. And even though it's very, very cheap and it's a way to be different, I mean, what have you seen from Bagley? Because I love how explosive he is when he gets the ball at the elbow.
Yeah, I mean, he's been great. I mean, he's been good. His minutes have been a little shaky. I mean, he's only playing in the 25 to 28 range, which is not exactly what you love to see. And one thing that's kind of pushing me away, not only the ownership is a little bit high on him, especially on FanDuel, because, that lower tier in the power forward spot over FanDuel is pretty thin. But he's also going up against Draymond Green. I mean, he's likely going to draw some Draymond Green defense. I mean, I hate to say it, but Draymond Green is still a pretty damn good defender. If he's only playing 20 to 22 minutes, you might not see as much, but would you rather see, or have a player that's not going to see Draymond Green for 20 or 22 minutes? More than likely, yeah, that's probably the route I'm going to go.
Yeah, I'm paying up. I mean, there are a lot of good options at power forward. Let me tell you, it'll be easy. It's going to be hard to miss at power forward. Same with center as well. Because, I mean, Joel Embiid, that's the obvious play. That's where I feel like a lot of people are going to be on. But other options that I like in matchup, Sean, you could tell me which of the best you like here. I mean, Adebayo versus OKC is great. And I happen to think Clint Capella at that 65, 6,100 price point is excellent. He's my center in the starting five in John's playbook. I mean, other options, Drummond, you could pay up for Vucevic as well, all who are in John's playbook too. Who stands out for you? Because for me, it's going to be a lot of Capella.
Yeah, I really like Bam. I know me and John, we're really high on him. John even jumped the gun on the pod last night and was already talking about Bam, I think, in the shooting guard list. But, yeah, I really like Bam. I know he's a cash play. But the same thing is the guy can go for 60 fantasy points on any given night, exactly what John said in the playbook. He does have that upside. His price is up there a little bit. But I think there's still a little bit of upside in that price. I still think this guy has that triple-double potential. It's a good matchup against OKC. So I like Bam quite a bit. Vucevic is probably more of my cash play. The guy's just been totally smashed, and no Evan Fournier again. He is the offense. He's running double-doubles every game. He had a monster double-double the other night. He's just been too good, and his price really has not changed much for the production he's been putting out. But once I start, and I do have to agree with you on Clint Capella. He totally smashed Drummond the other night. I mean, just obliterated Drummond. Pretty much got Drummond benched for the whole game. Drummond played 20 minutes. Capella just smashed. So for that reason, he's just that type of player. He can run the floor, he can stretch it, and he's just he can block shots. He grabs a lot of boards. He's just one of those guys that has the upside. Other than that, I mean, like I said, those are probably my three main. Drummond, I'm probably not going to. He kind of left too much of the bitter taste the other day.
You're looking at Mason Plumlee at all? I mean, he's not fun at all, but the inactives when it comes to Detroit gives him that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more worried of that game just being an absolute blowout, and I don't exactly know how much Plumlee will play in that. If it does get that, I mean, it's a 15-point spread, and the Pistons are basically missing half their starting five. I don't see a reason to play it. I mean, maybe in tournaments, I don't hate it, but I would probably rather go down against the counterpart and go to Bobby Portis at 4.9. Who we know is going to get all that blowout run for Milwaukee. So I think that would probably be the guy that I would probably have to go down to instead.
I was actually just about to ask you, if you had one ultimate pay up between Giannis and Luka, it almost seems like it's Luka. No questions asked, right?
Easily. Luka.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're just trying to be smart. I just want to say this when it comes to Andre Drummond, and Sean, I'm sure you'll agree, just because a player might average 14, 15 boards per game does not mean that they're a good on-ball defender, does not mean that they box out with aggressiveness like they should. It's just a stat. So don't be afraid of attacking Andre Drummond, because a lot of people will get that confused and won't. And guess what? In GPPs, we'll all win all that money, Sean.
Exactly. For sure.
He is Sean Mitchell on Twitter at SMitchell17, Justin Fensterman at FenceD Sports on Twitter. We'll be back, more live streams for all of you, the playbook, the value vault, our fast breaks, and starting five videos. Everything you can want, you're going to get. Hey, football might be over, but basketball, we're just getting fired up, and we're going to score all those baskets and win all of the money. Pride, passion. This is what we do. Here we go. This is how we are on fantasyalarm.com, helping you win. We always dominate, no other option. Just win.